here's the rose gold cup I just did. So again, you can kind of see it in the sun a little bit, the gold sparkles. So I've taped it with electrical tape, and that just ensures that the lines are really, really crisp. I just prefer to use this over painter's tape because once I started using this, I saw the effect that it had, and I liked it a lot better than just like a blue painter's tape. So I have my epoxy, so it looks like this. It's a purple box. Make sure it says clear cast on the top, because if it's not clear, then it won't give you that glossy clear look. These are a couple that I did this morning, and you can tell they're super shiny. So I have my 2-part epoxy. So I have these 2 little cups. I just got them in the cup pile. So I'm going to do my 1 part. I'm going to do about 1 tablespoon of this. About right there is plenty. And then I'm going to do the same part of this part. You need the same amount for each cup. It's really imperative that you get an equal 50-50 on it. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the more liquidy one and I'm going to pour it into the one that isn't as liquidy. I'm going to try to do this. I have to use one hand to hold my phone, so I'm sorry. So I would just make sure to scrape the edges off really good. Let me do that real quick. So just scrape the edges off the cup real good. To make sure you get every single last drop that you can get. So I've got it in my cup, so now I'm just going to stir it really well. I'm trying to figure out the easiest way to do this so y'all can see. But anyway, y'all know how to stir. So I'm just going to stir it really well. And be sure to get the sides. Nothing's working out for me to figure out how to hold my phone up, so I'm sorry. Okay, anyway, so you're just going to stir it really well. You're going to look outside for a minute. As you're stirring it, you want to make sure that you get the edges really good with the cup. And I just use a popsicle stick. I got a pack from Walmart for a couple bucks. And as you're stirring it, it'll get a little bubbly. That's fine. That's what you want. So it's just going to be super bubbly, so don't worry about that. And if you do end up getting epoxy on your hands, I've been wearing gloves, but I forgot to bring them out with me this time. But if you do get epoxy on your hands, I would just immediately go wash them because it gets super tacky super quickly. So just like warm soap and water should be fine. So this one, I'm going to put the decal on after I've painted. It's not going to have like a metally look to it. It's going to be an actual decal. So I'm going to do a thin layer of epoxy first. Then I'm going to decal. So once I do this layer, I'll let it cure for 24 hours to harden. And then I will take my decal, I'll cut it. I'll put the decal on the cup. I'll let it sit for maybe 5-10 minutes. And then I'll do a thicker layer of epoxy. So this one's going to be a pretty thin layer, which is fine because it's not the final layer. Okay, so I have my epoxy, and as you can tell, it's pretty bubbly, so that's fine, no big deal. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take my popsicle stick just to get the excess off, and I'm just going to wipe it along my cup. So that's fine. I'm just going to wipe it off just so you don't waste any. Okay, and now I would use a smaller brush, probably about half this size, but I did 4 cups yesterday, so I ran out. This is the only one I have here, so I figured that I'll just use it, whatever. So I'm just going to dip it into my cup, well, as much as I can. It doesn't really fit in my cup, but anyway, I'm just going to do a light layer. I'm just going to brush it on my cup, just a pretty light layer, just so the epoxy has something to kind of stick to as you're doing it. So let me get some more on there, and I'll make the video. I'm sorry, it's hard to do with one hand. So anyway, right now I'm just doing a pretty thin layer. I'm just kind of brushing it on with my brush. So I'm just brushing it on, doing the whole cup. Doing a pretty thin brush just to kind of do it pretty quickly. That's fine. It doesn't have to be pretty right now. You're just kind of giving your second coat that you're going to do something to really adhere to. Sorry, you're staring at a towel, guys. So anyway, I'm just going to do your thin layer real quick. And it's okay if you get it on the paint or the tape. That's what the tape's there for. So again, you're just doing a pretty thin layer. For those of you just now joining, this is a rose gold tumbler. So I'm just doing a pretty thin layer. Okay, so now I've got my thin layer on there, and you can already see it's a little glossy. So thank you for telling those why you were staring at something white. So it's pretty glossy, as you can tell. So you're just kind of brushing a thin layer on. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put my brush down. Now I have my cup of my epoxy. So I'm just going to pour it on. Now a lot of you are scared about pouring it on, but it's really, you know, the thicker the better, because it's gonna really cure to be harder anyway. So I'm just going to pour now. Remember, this is going to be my first layer, so it's not going to be as thick as my second layer once I put my decal. So I put my thin layer on. Now I'm going to put a little bit more on, and then I'm going to let it cure for 24 hours. Get my decal on, and then I'll do a thicker layer and let that cure for 24 hours. So again, I'm just going to pour lightly down the cup. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush and I'm just going to guide it down the side of the cup. I'm hardly putting any pressure down. I'm just guiding down my cup just so the epoxy knows where it's going. So I'm just guiding. Now I'm going to turn it, and I'm going to do it again on this side. Okay, and then we're going to guide again. So this way it's going to go down the cup. I'm barely holding on to the brush, just enough so that the brush doesn't kind of fall out of my hands. Because as the epoxy cures and as you rotate the cup, it's going to level